When my son told me I wasn't welcome for Christmas, I didn't shout. I didn't even blink. I just smiled, the kind of smile people mistake for understanding, and said, "Of course." He thought that meant I agreed. He didn't realize that "of course" was the sound of something snapping so quietly he couldn't hear it yet. Ethan stood in his perfect living room, the one I'd bought piece by piece over the last 5 years, and tried to look brave. His wife hovered behind him, pretending to wipe the counter while watching my reaction the way a hunter watches a trap. "Dad, it's not that we don't want you around," he began. "It's just Vanessa's parents are coming. They have their own traditions." "Traditions," I repeated, "and I'm not one of them." He flinched just slightly. Vanessa stepped forward, her voice syrupy and false. "It's not personal, Dennis. It's just that the seating's tight, and they're used to a quieter atmosphere. You know, classical music, small talk, champagne. We're trying to make it elegant this year." Elegant. That word stuck to the roof of my mouth like ash. I looked around their gleaming house, the curtains imported from Italy, the granite counters, the refinished floors, the chandelier that hung above their dining table like a trophy. Every inch of it existed because I'd said yes one too many times. "Where will I spend Christmas then?" I asked, knowing the answer didn't matter. Ethan shrugged. "Maybe Aunt Lily's? Or, we can do something the weekend after. It's just one day, Dad." One day. That was how people like him thought about loyalty, measured in convenience, wrapped in excuses. I nodded slowly, as if the conversation meant nothing, and rose from the couch. "Tell Vanessa's parents I said Merry Christmas." Then I walked to the door, calm, deliberate. The December air met me like a slap, sharp and clean. I stood in the driveway a long time, staring at the house I'd built for someone else, the house I would soon unbuild one quiet step at a time. Home was silent when I returned. Too silent. Maria used to fill that silence with humming, with the sound of pots on the stove, with life. After she died, I'd convinced myself that helping Ethan was a way of keeping her alive, that every check, every loan, every sure son I'll cover, it was me protecting the little piece of family I had left. Now I saw it for what it was, a bribe for affection that never came. I went to my office, pulled open the bottom drawer, and set a worn cardboard box on the desk. Inside were years of statements, receipts, and folded notes with Ethan's handwriting. "Just until next month, Dad. We'll pay you back as soon as the bonus hits. Vanessa says thank you." I laid them out like a priest preparing a ritual. $2,800 per month, automatic transfer to their mortgage, 5 years. $47,000 for the down payment, $19,600 for furniture Vanessa needed to impress her book club, $9,200 for a roof replacement after Ethan couldn't find a good deal, $6,000 for landscaping because the HOA had opinions about the grass. By midnight, the calculator said $205,000. It blinked the number at me like a confession. I poured a whiskey, stared out at the frozen yard, and whispered to the dark, "You're welcome." Then I picked up the phone. "First National Bank," the woman said. "How can I assist you tonight?" "I need to cancel an automatic transfer." Her keyboard clicked. The $2,800 monthly to Brighton Federal? You've been paying that quite a while. 5 years? Would you like to stop it effective next cycle? No, I said. Effective immediately. A pause. Then, done, Mr. Flores? Anything else? I smiled into the receiver. No, that's everything. When I hung up, the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt balanced. The next morning, the phone rang before I'd finished my coffee. Dennis, hi. Vanessa's voice was bright, brittle, performative. Could you do us a huge favor? My parents land at 4. Their driver canceled last minute. Could you pick them up? I stirred my coffee, watching the ripples spiral outward. Why me? Because that's what family does, she said, the cheer cracking just a little. You're the only one with free time during the day. Family, I repeated, tasting the word, of course. What airline? Green Mountain 612. Don't be late. They notice things. I smiled. I'll take care of it. At 4 o'clock, I sat in my recliner. At 5, I muted the phone. By 6, the pounding started. I opened the door to find Vanessa, her mother, and her father on my porch. Their expensive coats were dusted with snow, their faces red with fury. "What is wrong with you?" her father roared. "We waited 3 hours at that airport." "You told me to pick them up," I said. "You didn't specify when." "Don't be ridiculous," Vanessa snapped. "You made us look like fools." I met her eyes, calm as winter water. "Then we're even." Her father jabbed a finger at me. "You'll regret this." I stepped aside, letting the cold spill in. "Maybe, but at least it'll be on my own dime." Then I shut the door. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with messages I didn't bother reading. Instead, I walked to the end of the driveway, opened the mailbox, and found my face staring back at me from the local paper. Local man abandons elderly couple at airport during holiday storm. There hadn't been a storm, just a story. The article quoted Vanessa's father describing me as unstable and possibly suffering cognitive decline. It called me a danger to myself, a man who refused medical help. I laughed until my ribs hurt. They'd tried to erase my dignity, to make me small. They didn't understand. People like me don't break. We calcify. I clipped the article, folded it neatly, and set it beside Maria's picture on the mantel. "You always said karma takes her time," I whispered. "Maybe I'll lend her my watch." That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through every room in my house, turning on lights, touching furniture I'd owned since before Ethan was born. Solid oak, handmade, built to last. The kind of things his generation thought they could replace with credit and chrome. In the hallway hung a photo from Ethan's 8th Christmas. He was missing a front tooth, holding the model train I'd stayed up all night assembling. Maria stood behind him, tired but glowing. That was the last year we had real snow on Christmas Eve. I remembered shoveling the driveway while she watched from the window, hot chocolate steaming in her hands. The memory should have hurt. Instead, it sharpened. I realized then that every kindness I'd given Ethan after Maria's death wasn't love. It was guilt. Guilt for not being able to protect her. Guilt for raising a son who measured worth in dollars instead of character. I poured another drink and opened my laptop. Bank statements, invoices, transfers, all of it lined up like dominoes. If they wanted to play reputation games, I'd show them what a reputation looks like when it's stripped down to numbers and signatures. I printed everything. The machine hummed for nearly an hour, spitting out page after page of proof. Proof of generosity, proof of betrayal, proof of what happens when you mistake silence for weakness. When the last sheet slid onto the tray, I sat back, listening to the cooling tick of the printer. 5 years of payments, $200,000, one Christmas ban. The math was simple. So was justice. Morning crept in through the blinds, gray and indifferent. I hadn't slept, but I felt awake for the first time in years. The air smelled different, cleaner somehow, lighter, without the weight of self-delusion. I brewed fresh coffee and took it to the porch. Across the street, Mrs. Keene waved, her dog tugging at its leash. She didn't know anything about the article. People like Vanessa's family assumed small-town gossip traveled fast. But they forgot. Decent folks don't spread lies. They wait for truth to surface like oil on water. I checked my phone. Dozens of missed calls. Ethan, mostly. A few from numbers I didn't recognize. I deleted them all. For lunch, I drove into town, bought myself a proper meal at the diner I'd avoided for years because I'd been saving every penny for someone else. The waitress asked if I wanted pie. I said yes. 2 slices. One for Maria, I told her. She smiled like she understood. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table and reread the article, not out of anger this time, out of study. I circled every exaggeration, every manipulation, every lie I could dismantle with a single document. By the time the sun set, the paper looked like a crime scene map. I didn't have to shout or beg. All I needed to do was wait. Because people who build their lives on borrowed money always pay eventually. And I had just canceled their lifeline. That night, I opened my journal, something I hadn't touched since Maria's funeral, and wrote one line across the first clean page, December 16th, the day they learned what absence feels like. Then I poured myself another drink, raised the glass to the empty chair across from me, and whispered, "Merry Christmas, love." The show's about to start. I woke the next morning before the sun. The world was still blue and cold, that suspended hour when nothing moves except the steam from your own breath. For years, I'd used that hour to work, to get ahead, to make money that always seemed to end up in someone else's pocket. That morning, I used it to plan. The newspaper article lay on the kitchen table, the ink slightly smudged from where I'd traced every lie with my fingertip. Beside it sat the file I'd printed overnight. 5 years of financial proof, methodically organized, stapled, labeled. I stared at it the way a craftsman looks at his tools before building something permanent. They wanted to humiliate me publicly. Fine, but I'd build something they couldn't erase, evidence that would bleed their reputation dry. I made myself breakfast, eggs and black coffee, the kind Maria used to cook before the world decided kindness was optional. While I ate, I scrolled through the local news on my laptop. The article had spread to the community section of 3 neighboring towns, shared by people who loved a bit of scandal to go with their morning coffee. Elderly father abandons couple in need. Holiday heartbreak in Spokane. There was even a grainy photo of my house taken from the street, captioned, "Neighbors shocked. No one had asked me for a comment." They never do when the lie is prettier than the truth. The comment section was a carnival of self-righteous strangers. Some people shouldn't be around family if they can't control their temper. Imagine doing that to your own daughter-in-law's parents. One woman even wrote, "Sounds like dementia." I closed the laptop. It didn't matter. Every accusation was a nail in the coffin of their own future. At 8:30, I dialed the number of an old friend, Harold Kent. He'd run a small investigative firm back when I was still contracting. We'd worked together on more than one messy construction lawsuit. If there was dirt to be found, Harold could dig it up blindfolded. "Dennis! Haven't heard your voice since, hell, Maria's service, was it?" "Too long," I said. "I've got a project for you." "Legal or moral?" "Both." "Quiet, though." He chuckled. "Those are the fun ones." "Who's the target?" I told him. "Names, addresses, bank affiliations, social accounts." When I finished, there was silence on the line. "Christ, Dennis, that's family." "Not anymore," I said. "Now they're clients who owe a debt." Harold whistled low. "All right, old friend. I'll start with the son-in-law's father. You said banking connections." "Yes, Cody Jenkins. Likes attention, hates exposure. Find me everything." "You got it." I hung up and exhaled. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken since Maria died. By noon, I'd organized the file into sections, one for finances, one for lies, one labeled simply Future. That folder would hold what came next, receipts of my patience turning into action. I drove to the hardware store, bought new locks, a shredder, a camera for the front porch. Vanessa's family had a habit of showing up uninvited, always smiling, always pretending concern while measuring what they could still take. Not this time. At the checkout counter, the clerk asked if I was preparing for Christmas guests. "Something like that," I said. When I returned home, there was a message on my answering machine. "Ethan, Dad, I don't know what's going on. The bank says the mortgage payment didn't go through. Vanessa's worried. Please call me. We can fix this." Fix this? It was always we when they needed saving. You when they didn't. I poured myself a drink and listened again, this time focusing on his tone. There was fear under the guilt, a tremor I hadn't heard since he was a teenager who'd wrecked the family car. That sound was music. I deleted the message. 2 days later, Harold called back. "I've got what you asked for, and then some." "Tell me." "Cody Jenkins, big mouth, small secrets. He left the bank 5 years ago after a quiet internal investigation. Nothing public, but there were whispers about creative accounting in the retirement fund division. He's been living off hush money and reputation ever since." "And Catherine?" "Spends more than he ever made. Credit cards up to their necks. Charity events for optics. If that house of theirs hiccups once, it'll collapse." "Good," I said. "Send it all to me." "There's more. Your daughter-in-law's little online boutique, technically under Ethan's name for tax purposes. The IRS would love it." I felt something tighten inside me. Not guilt, not joy, something purer. "Excellent work, Harold. Send your invoice. For you, Dennis. Consider it a Christmas gift." That night, I laid out the new documents beside my own. Side by side, they painted a perfect picture of arrogance built on borrowed time. Maria would have told me to let it go. But Maria never met Vanessa's father. I poured another drink, opened my notebook, and wrote across the top of a fresh page, Phase 1, Reclamation. I started small. A call to the local reporter, polite and professional. "Miss Morrison, I'm Dennis Flores, the man in your airport story. I believe you may have been misled." She sounded cautious. "Mr. Flores, the information came from reliable sources." "Of course," I said. "Cody Jenkins, former banker, yes? Did he mention the $200,000 I've transferred to his family over the last 5 years?" A pause, the kind journalists can't resist filling. "That wasn't— Are you saying you have proof?" "I'm saying I have receipts, bank statements, wire records, and photographs of every major purchase they made with my money. You can have them, if you're interested in the truth this time." Her tone changed instantly. "Can you meet tomorrow?" "Tomorrow's fine." "Bring your conscience." When she arrived the next morning, she looked nervous. I welcomed her into my kitchen, poured her coffee, and set the file on the table like an offering. She leafed through the papers, eyes widening as she realized what she was holding. This changes everything." "No," I said. "This reveals everything. They changed it when they lied." "Would you be willing to go on record?" "Not yet. I don't want retractions or apologies. I want silence. For now." She nodded slowly. "You want to choose when it breaks?" "Exactly." When she left, I watched her car disappear down the snowy street and felt the first stirrings of something close to satisfaction. The next week was a lesson in restraint. Ethan called every day, sometimes twice. The messages shifted from guilt to pleading, from "we're family" to "please just talk to me." I ignored them all. On Thursday, Vanessa showed up at my door, makeup perfect, voice trembling with false humility. "Dennis, can we talk?" "We're talking," I said, not inviting her in. "Look, there's been some misunderstanding. My father, he can be protective. You know how parents are." I let the words hang there, heavy and cruel. "Yes," I said softly. "I do." Her composure cracked. "We just need your help for a few months until Ethan's promotion goes through." "The bank, well, you canceled the automatic payment and—" "I did." "Why?" I met her eyes, steady and cold. "Because you taught me the difference between generosity and stupidity." She blinked, mouth opening and closing. "You're really going to let us lose the house?" "It's not your house," I said. "It's the bank's. Maybe you can invite them for Christmas next year." Her jaw tightened. "You're cruel." "Finally," I said, "you're paying attention." I closed the door in her face. That night, I dreamed of Maria again. She was sitting at the old piano, humming that half-song she used to play when she thought I wasn't listening. In the dream, she looked up and smiled, not the warm smile I remembered, but something different, proud, approving. When I woke, the house was quiet, but the guilt I'd expected never came. By mid-December, the whispers had started. Cody and Catherine's social circle loved a scandal even more than a secret. Someone had leaked that their successful investments weren't paying out, that there was trouble at the bank, that the daughter's husband might be under investigation for tax issues. No one traced it to me. They wouldn't dare. Vanessa posted smiling family photos online, desperate to project normalcy. But her eyes told the truth, tight, wide, hunted. I waited. On December 21st, Harold called again. They're panicking. Jenkins has been making calls to local business associations trying to get ahead of rumors. It's not working. Good, I said. Let him sweat until Christmas. That evening, I sat by the fireplace and reread the notes I'd made the night Maria died. Words about forgiveness, about staying soft in a hard world. I crossed them out with a single stroke of my pen. Kindness is wasted on the ungrateful. Then underneath, I wrote the final line for Phase 1. They took my place at Christmas. I'll take their peace in return. The snow fell harder the next day, thick flakes catching in the porch light. I watched the neighborhood decorate their lawns, children laughing, families carrying boxes of ornaments. For the first time in years, I didn't feel left out. I felt a part, untouchable, as though I'd stepped out of the picture entirely and was finally free to watch the truth play out. I thought of Ethan, of the boy who used to wait at the window for me to come home, waving through the glass. He'd grown into a man who closed the same window when I walked by. I'd spent 5 years paying for that window, paying for his silence. Now he could look through it at everything falling apart. On Christmas Eve morning, I received another call from Patricia Morrison, the reporter. "Mr. Flores," she said carefully, "I just wanted to thank you for meeting with me. I can't publish yet, as you requested, but I wanted you to know. Your story made me rethink why I became a journalist. People deserve truth." "Keep it safe for now," I said. "There'll be a time to print it. Christmas night, perhaps." "You mean after?" "After they finish dinner." She hesitated. "You're planning something, aren't you?" I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "I'm planning clarity." That night, I stood outside on my porch, listening to the wind move through the trees. For the first time in 5 years, I wasn't calculating someone else's bills or wondering how to keep another roof standing. The only roof I cared about was above my own head, solid and paid in full. Inside, the fireplace crackled, and Maria's photograph watched me from the mantel. I lifted my glass to her and whispered, "Phase 2 begins tomorrow." Christmas Eve morning smelled of frost and endings. The sky was the color of old pewter. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. I'd always thought revenge would feel fiery, but it didn't. It felt clean, like winter air after a storm. On the table in front of me lay 2 stacks of paper. One, their lies, trimmed and folded from the newspaper article. 2, my truth, bank statements, photos, receipts. Between them sat a fountain pen, black and gleaming, like a weapon that only needed ink. I wrote 12 envelopes. Each bore the name of one of Vanessa's dinner guests, neighbors, colleagues, social climbers who adored gossip as much as wine. Inside each envelope went a curated truth, a copy of one payment receipt, one flattering photo of the Jenkins family flaunting something I'd paid for, and one short note. Generosity should never be mistaken for servitude. Dennis Flores. No threats, no explanations, just evidence, gift wrapped in silence. By noon, I was in town, mailing the envelopes from 3 different post offices. Old habits die hard. I'd learned caution from a lifetime of watching good men ruined by details. Each clerk wished me Merry Christmas. I wished them the same and meant it. On my way home, I passed Ethan's house. From the street, it looked idyllic. Wreaths on the door, candles in the windows, laughter faint behind glass. The illusion was perfect. But illusions always crack first at the edges. A moving truck idled at the curb, its logo half covered in snow. Two men carried out boxes labeled storage, office files. So Cody Jenkins was moving some of his business records. Good. Let him hurry. That evening, I dressed the way Maria once liked me best. Pressed shirt, dark coat, polished shoes. There was nothing sentimental about it. It was armor. The man who used to beg for acceptance would stay home. The man who walked out tonight was something colder, steadier. At 6 p.m. sharp, Patricia Morrison called. "I've drafted the follow-up," she said. "Balanced, factual, everything verified. It exposes the false statements and confirms your financial support." "Hold it until I tell you," I said. "How will I know when?" "You'll hear about it before midnight. It'll be inescapable. Driving across town, I rehearsed nothing. I didn't need to. Truth doesn't require performance." Still, I felt Maria's presence in the passenger seat. A memory, not a ghost. She would have disapproved, at least at first, but Maria had believed in balance, and balance was exactly what I intended to restore. Vanessa Street was ablaze with lights, every house competing for admiration. Their driveway overflowed with cars. Success has a scent people can't resist. I parked across the road, adjusted my tie, and walked toward the noise of laughter that poured from their open door. Inside, the house looked like a magazine cover. Gold ribbons, crystal glasses, music low and pretentious. Catherine Jenkins' voice carried through the dining room. She was mid-story. Something about summering in Maine. Vanessa froze when she saw me in the doorway, wine glass halfway to her lips. "Dennis," she said, tight-smiled. "You weren't invited." "I know," I said. "That's what makes this visit special." Ethan stood, pale. "Dad, please." "Sit down, son," I said quietly. "You might learn something." The room went still, except for the faint crackle of the fireplace. I placed my briefcase on the marble buffet. Metal clasps snapped open, sharp, final. "These," I said, laying out folders one by one, "are records of the last 5 years. Every mortgage payment, renovation cost, and luxury item I financed while being told I didn't belong at this table." Gasps fluttered around the room like startled birds. A man in a blazer leaned forward. "Is this a joke?" "No," I said. "It's arithmetic." I began handing out the documents, moving slowly, methodically. 12 people, 12 copies, each page stamped with numbers that could burn reputations faster than fire. Vanessa lunged for the papers. "This is private." "Privacy," I said, "is for the honest." For several seconds, only paper rustled. Then the whispering began. Catherine's pearls clicked against her glass as she trembled. "Cody," she hissed, "you told me—" "I told you," he offered, Cody said, voice shaking. "I didn't think—" "You never do," I cut in. "That's why you'll enjoy the encore." I reached into the briefcase again and pulled out one final folder. The newspaper article, annotated in red ink. Every lie underlined. Beside each line, I'd written the correction. Dates, receipts, witnesses. I laid it in front of Patricia's printed byline. "Tomorrow's edition will print the truth," I said. "Your story collapses at sunrise." Vanessa's voice cracked. "You can't humiliate us like this." "I'm not humiliating you," I said. "I'm revealing you." Cody slammed his fist on the table. "You've made a powerful enemy tonight, old man." I smiled. "You keep mistaking power for money. You're running out of both." Catherine rose, trembling. "We'll sue you for defamation." "Please do," I said. "Discovery will be a fascinating process." Ethan finally spoke, voice small. "Dad, stop. You're destroying us." I looked at him, not the way a father looks at a son, but the way a builder looks at a wall that won't hold weight. "I gave you everything," I said. "You built a kingdom on my back, then barred the gates. Tonight, I'm just knocking them down." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then I closed the briefcase, turned toward the door, and said over my shoulder, "Merry Christmas. Next year, try earning it." Outside, snow drifted under the streetlights. I stood for a long moment, letting the cold bite my face until it felt clean again. Behind me, shouting rose, voices overlapping, blame ricocheting like gunfire, a chorus of panic. It was beautiful. I drove home in silence. At the first red light, I saw my reflection in the windshield and hardly recognized it. Not bitter, not broken, just finished. At 10:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Patricia, is this it?" I replied, "Yes." "Run it." At 10:30, the online version of her article went live. Headline, "Charity or Control? The Truth Behind Spokane's Airport Scandal." It told everything. My financial support, their manipulation, the planted smear. By midnight, the story had been shared hundreds of times. By morning, thousands. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching headlights crawl across the snow like slow comets. Each one felt like a messenger, carrying the truth to another corner of their social circle. At 6 a.m., the first voicemail arrived from Catherine Jenkins, her voice shrill and cracking. "How dare you? You've ruined us. Cody's board is demanding an investigation. Do you understand what you've done?" I deleted it halfway through. The next was from Ethan. "Dad, please, we can fix this. Just talk to me." But he didn't want conversation. He wanted control. And control was the one currency I'd finally stopped trading. By noon, the Jenkins house was swarmed. News vans, neighbors, former friends pretending concern. The same paper that once painted me as cruel now printed words like vindicated and victim of manipulation. Even the anchor on the evening broadcast used the phrase, "a remarkable reversal." I watched from my kitchen table, a cup of coffee cooling beside me. The satisfaction wasn't loud. It was surgical, precise, final. That afternoon, Harold called, laughing so hard he could barely speak. "Dennis, you absolute legend. They're finished. Cody's business partners are cutting ties, his country club membership's been revoked, and I hear Catherine's charity board just voted her out." "Good," I said. "Let them enjoy each other's company. They're all they have left." "You sure you don't want me to dig any deeper? Could find more." "There's no need. I said. Corruption destroys itself once you stop feeding it. That night, I lit a fire and poured the last of the good whiskey. The flames licked at the edge of the final newspaper, today's edition, until the page curled and blackened. Ash floated upward, delicate as snow. I realized then that revenge isn't about rage, it's about control. It's about ending a story on your terms. I raised the glass to the photograph of Maria. Phase 3 complete, I whispered. One left. Outside, the wind carried faint echoes of carols from the town square. For the first time in years, they didn't make me ache. They made me smile. Tomorrow would bring consequences. The foreclosure letters, the withdrawals of credit, the quiet phone calls of disavowal. And after that, peace. Real peace. The kind you can only buy with bloodless precision. The morning after Christmas smelled like victory and burnt paper. The wind had scoured every driveway clean, as if the night itself wanted to erase what had happened. I stood on my porch with a mug of black coffee and watched the neighborhood wake to its bright, ordinary world. Children dragging new sleds through the snow, dogs barking, laughter echoing. Normal life resumed everywhere except at Ethan's house. Their curtains stayed drawn. The wreath that had hung proudly on the front door now lay crooked in the snow, crushed by the heel of some frantic exit. No car in the driveway, no lights, only silence thick enough to taste. I went inside, sat at my kitchen table, and unfolded the morning paper. Prominent family faces financial questions. Beneath the headline, the smiling faces of Cody, Catherine, and Vanessa looked like ghosts already fading. The article quoted bank representatives, local business owners, even a former colleague from the country club. Words like misrepresentation, liabilities, and investigation bloomed across the column like frost. It was everything I'd wanted. No violence, no shouting, just exposure. By the time I finished my coffee, the phones began. Reporters, acquaintances, people pretending to care. I unplugged the landline and turned my cell off. Peace is fragile. You have to defend it. 2 days later, a letter arrived by certified mail. Return address, Brighton Federal Mortgage Division. I knew what it was before I opened it, but ceremony has its place. Notice of default and demand for payment. 3 months past due, total arrears $8,400. 14 days to remedy before foreclosure proceedings. $8,400. That was the price of their arrogance. I set the letter beside the others, poured myself another cup of coffee, and stared out the window until the snow blurred into white noise. By evening, I'd received 6 voicemails from Ethan. The 7th came with a knock. When I opened the door, he looked like a man carved out of regret. Unshaven, coat wrinkled, eyes rimmed red. He stood there holding a folded newspaper, the same one that carried their downfall. "Dad," he said, voice small, "can I come in?" I stepped aside without answering. He hovered near the doorway as though the house might reject him the way he'd once rejected me. His gaze landed on Maria's photo above the mantel. He flinched. "Good. Coffee?" I asked. He nodded, and I poured him a mug, sliding it across the table like a peace offering neither of us believed in. He took a sip, winced at the bitterness, Then the dam broke. "Vanessa's gone," he said. "Her parents left town. Everyone we know. No one's returning our calls. The bank's calling the loan. We're losing the house." I said nothing. He rubbed his face. "I know you think we deserve this, but, Dad, please, if there's anything you can do—" "There isn't," I said, "and even if there were, I wouldn't." His mouth opened, then closed. He looked down at his hands like they belonged to someone else. "You don't understand what it's like," he whispered, "watching everything collapse, feeling powerless." I leaned forward. "Actually, son, I understand perfectly. I lived that feeling for 5 years while you took every dollar I earned and called it love." He swallowed hard. "I was trying to build a life." "You were trying to buy one," I said. "There's a difference." Silence stretched between us, the kind that exposes every lie. He looked older than 34, more like 50. The arrogance was gone. All that remained was the boy who once built a snow fort in our yard and called it a castle. I almost pitied him. Almost. He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. Inside were photos, Christmas mornings from years past. Maria holding him as a toddler, both of them laughing, tinsel tangled in his hair. Another of all 3 of us beside the old tree before money complicated love. He slid them toward me. "I found these when we packed up the house. I thought you should have them." I looked at the pictures but didn't touch them. "Keep them," I said. "They're reminders of who you were. You'll need that more than I do." Tears welled in his eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness." "Good," I said, "because forgiveness isn't free." He nodded slowly. "Then what do I do?" "Start by learning the difference between family and favor," I said. "When you figure that out, call me." Not before. He left without another word. For weeks, I heard nothing. The newspaper followed every step of their decline. The foreclosure filing, the IRS inquiry, the sudden disappearance of Jenkins Enterprises from local sponsorship banners. People pretended surprise, but everyone loves a fall from grace more than they love grace itself. I kept busy, repainted the kitchen, fixed the porch light Maria always wanted replaced. Small acts of repair in a world that finally stopped taking. One night, while sanding the window frame, I caught my reflection in the glass. There was no joy, no remorse, just calm. I realized revenge doesn't heal. It sterilizes. It removes infection. And when infection is gone, you don't mourn the pain. You appreciate the silence. Mid-March brought a thaw and a final letter from the bank confirming foreclosure was complete. The property at 1327 Crestview Lane had been repossessed. I folded the letter, placed it in my file marked Closure, and slid it into the drawer. That drawer used to hold bills. Now it held proof that I'd paid everyone. In April, Harold called. He'd driven by the old house out of curiosity. "Empty," he said. "Bank's got it listed already." Funny thing, when I peeked in the window, the chandelier was gone. I smiled. "They probably sold it before they left." Everyone wants to take one last thing they don't own. He laughed. "You're colder than the weather, Dennis." "Winter taught me," I said, and hung up. Weeks turned into months. Spring dressed the town in color again, and with it came invitations, Barbecues, fishing trips, friendly visits I'd declined for years. Apparently, the town had remembered that I existed. Funny how integrity looks more interesting after scandal. I attended one or two gatherings. People were polite, curious, careful not to mention Ethan's name. When they finally did, it was in whispers. "He's in Portland, looking for work." Vanessa filed for separation. They say her parents went bankrupt. I nodded, offered no opinion. Let them make their own conclusions. The truth didn't need my help anymore. Summer brought heat and quiet evenings. I'd sit on the porch with a book, the same way Maria used to, and listen to crickets saw at the air. Sometimes the phone would ring, unknown numbers, messages I never checked. Once, I answered by mistake. "Dad?" Ethan's voice was faint, exhausted. "I got a job," he said. "Small firm. Apartment's nothing fancy, but it's mine. I'm sorry it took losing everything to understand what you were trying to teach me." "That's how most lessons work," I said. "Maybe one day you'll let me buy you dinner." "Maybe," I said, "but make sure you can afford the tip." He laughed softly, the sound shaky, but real. Then he hung up. I set the phone down and stared at the dusk. That was enough. No apologies, no tears, just acknowledgement. The kind that costs something to give. Autumn came. Leaves fell like confessions. I visited Maria's grave on the anniversary of her passing. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. I cleaned the headstone, replaced the flowers, and told her everything. The lies, the revenge, the silence that followed. "I think you'd still shake your head," I said, "but you'd understand." The wind moved through the trees like a sigh. Maybe that was her answer. That night, I opened my journal to the first page I'd written months earlier. December 16th, the day they learned what absence feels like. Beneath it, I added one last line. October 3rd, the day I remembered what peace feels like. Then I closed the book. The world moved on, as it always does. People forgot headlines, forgot gossip, forgot that an old man once canceled a mortgage and changed 3 lives. But I didn't need remembrance. I needed quiet. Every so often I drive past the house on Crestview Lane. The new owners planted maple trees where the flower beds used to be. The place looks smaller somehow, as though it finally fits its new occupants. No ghosts left. No debts either. I park across the street, watch the children playing in the yard, and feel nothing but relief. That house was never mine. It was a monument to weakness I no longer carry. Back home, I light the fireplace even in mild weather. Old habit, the flames dance, and I pour one last measure of whiskey, the kind Maria saved for celebrations. I raise the glass to the mantel. "To justice," I whisper, "and to quiet rooms." The fire answers with a soft crackle, sparks drifting upward like unspoken words. Somewhere outside, a church bell strikes the hour, slow, steady, final. I smile. They took my place at Christmas. I took their world. Balance restored.